It's Tuesday, December 16th, 2003, 2:20 p.m. We're at the New York Tracon and about to begin an interview with Steve Saul. And I'm John Azzarello, Teammate 9/11 Commission.
Miles Kira, 9/11 Commission.
Jeff Brown, 9/11 Commission.
Mary McCarthy, FAA Legal.
Steve Saul from the FAA, New York Tracon.
And Steve, your last name is spelled S-A-U-L, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Steve, can you start off by, before we get to the events of September 11th, by just giving us a little idea of your background and your employment with the FAA, when you started, and the various positions you've held and facilities you've worked at?
Okay. Prior to working for the FAA as a controller, I was a pilot. I used to fly commuter airplanes, twin-engine turboprops. Basically, the airlines I used to fly for are owned by American Airlines right now, American Eagle. This is a series of buyouts. I was a flight instructor. Went to college, got a Bachelor of Science in Aeronautics and Management. In 1981, Reagan fired the controllers. There wasn't much hiring going on. I was 26 years old. The hiring was basically stopped, so I thought I'd try this. And I figured I would get my foot in the door of the FAA or maybe fly for the FAA. If I didn't like it, I'd go back to commercial flying, again, private flying. I was hired as an air traffic controller in 1982. I progressed pretty rapidly because of my experience. I was a controller at first in the ISOP area. After I was also a training specialist. I trained the new controllers when they came in the ISOP area. I was a procedure specialist. I worked down here developing procedures and different aspects of the operation as far as all kinds of procedures, what routes they fly, what altitudes, letters, agreements, and such. After that, I was a controller in the another area of the LaGuardia sector here. And then I went to work in, I got a supervisor's job at ISOP Tower. I worked at ISOP Tower for 2 years as a supervisor. I came back here. I worked as a traffic management specialist for 1 year. And then I became a supervisor in the area I am. I've been a supervisor in the area I am for 13 years. So I've been working for the FAA for 21 and a half years, 19 and a half here, 2 years in ISOP Tower. And I still have the same position I have now as a supervisor in the Liberty sector.
Liberty sector. Okay.
Is that where, have you been a supervisor in Liberty sector for the last 13 years?
Yes.
Are you, when you're certified as a supervisor for Liberty, does that mean you're certified for supervising the other areas, or is that separate certification?
It's separate certification. The only is out of the 5 areas, excluding the TMU desk, you stay in one area. You can't go to the other areas unless you're certified.
Cool. Have you ever held any of those other supervisory positions in the other 4 areas here?
I was actually a temporary supervisor at traffic management desk for about 2 months prior to becoming a supervisor in Liberty area. I was a traffic management specialist there, and they started creating supervisory positions up there, and I was one of the first guys up there, so they made me a supervisor early, and then knowing that I was going to leave and a more senior super was going to take my position up there. So I only worked at the traffic management desk and the Liberty sector as a supervisor. But I worked in 4 out of the 6 areas if you count the traffic management area.
Okay. If you can bring us to the morning of September 11th and tell us when you started working that day and what position you reported to.
I don't remember exactly if I was working at 6 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning. It was one or the other. So I was here either at 6 in the morning. If I wasn't at 6, I was probably here by 6:30. It says here is at 11:51 Universal Coordinated Time, which would be, let's see, 5 hours.
-4.
-4. That's
daylight
right.
time.
So 7:51 local. I was working as, I took over as a supervisor in the Liberty sector from another supervisor. And I worked that position till 9:17 in the morning local. The first aircraft impacted around 8:45 local, and the second one roughly 9 o'clock local. So I was there 55 minutes, about 55 minutes prior to the first impact.
When did you, how did you first learn about the fact that American Airlines 11 was a possible hijack out of Boston?
like I said, around 8:40 in the morning, I was actually training somebody on the back to be a controller in charge. The controllers have to actually change, so when the supervisor's not there, controller will be in charge. So the traffic management specialist, Carl Juracek, asked me to come to the desk, and he showed me this target that didn't have a transponder. What we see on our scope is a little triangle. And he said that that's American 11, took off out of Boston, and supposedly was routed over Albany, and they believe he's being hijacked. Coincidentally, I heard something on the radio on the way to work that they caught somebody about who hijacked a Canadian airliner about 20 years prior. So it didn't surprise me. I just kind of thought that, somebody just got the idea to do this. You guys are smiling. You heard that?
No, I mean,
No, that's the first time we've heard that.
the first time
Because I heard
You know,
something
people
on
we talked to,
the...
that's the first time we've heard that.
So it didn't surprise me. I've been here when Lufthansa aircraft was hijacked, and like I said, I've been involved in aviation since I was 18 years old. So I've been involved in it. I've been very interested in the whole industry. So anyway, Cole pointed to this target. It was a little triangle, which was actually pretty much over where we are right now, the center of Long Island. It was fast moving, and he told me they thought it was American 11, and they thought it was being hijacked, and keep an eye on them. And I went to, they have up there a FIDO machine, what we call, so we can check the flight plans. So I went in there and I full routed it, which it would show me his route of flight. And it showed him not being stored, and the reason was because he didn't originate in New York Center's airspace, he originated in Boston Center's airspace, so we knew nothing about it because our computer is tied, so I didn't know who it was. I was trying to figure out.
You didn't get the route of flight because it was not a...
It was not stored. The flight did not originate in New York Center's airspace. It originated in Boston Center's, so our computer is not tied into Boston Center's.
Okay.
So I didn't know I was just trying to find out what type of aircraft it was.
What kind of data, if any, could you get when you plugged it in?
I can get his call sign, his type of aircraft, what kind of navigation equipment he has on board, his whole route of flight to where he was going on the West Coast, wherever it was.
And were you not able to get any of that?
Nothing.
Oh, nothing. Okay.
Nothing. So the flight didn't exist.
Okay.
Which is normal. That's a normal thing that would happen.
Okay. Did you know anything? Did you and Carl have any discussions about what altitude he was believed to be at?
Yeah, I think that's from what I read here. I said they thought he might be at flight level 290.
And did anybody tell you why they thought he might have been at that level?
That was probably his last. Nobody told me why, but that was probably his last spot clear to altitude, or his final filed altitude, one or the other. And if I full routed that machine, I wouldn't be able to see that. He was moving fast, as though he was consistent at high altitude, because normally an aircraft down low isn't going to be moving at that speeds. Below 10,000 feet, they're only allowed to go 250 knots, and this guy he probably had a ground speed of, I'm guessing, 320, 330, 340 knots.
How did you guess that speed based on what I've
From my experience observing the target, how fast it moves along the ground.
Okay.
And it was very busy. I told the controller who was working the south position, Steve Valero, that the aircraft was Nordo. I did not want to tell him it was a hijack because it was very busy, and then what's going to happen is distracting everybody from everything. And I told him, we don't know his altitude, stay away from him, meaning using lateral separation. If he's going this way, just go behind him. Don't go underneath him. Don't go above him, or whatever you think, because right. So if you go behind him, and it was just natural, he didn't have to do anything. The aircraft would have passed through his airspace without it being in conflict.
Did you, were you able to determine whether or not there was air traffic at Steve Valero's position that was potentially in conflict with?
Mm-hmm. There was nobody who would have been laterally in a position of conflict. As it turned out, he never entered our Steve Valero's airspace because of where he impacted. He never went through it.
So after you alerted Steve Valero to the fact that the American 11 was, you tell him it was just Nordo, that was it with regards to...
I told him to stay out of his way, and which was easy to accomplish. He didn't even have to do anything.
Did you tell him what call sign it was, or no? Did you say American 11? No. Did you tell him it was a commercial jet versus a general aviation aircraft?
I don't remember.
Okay. What happened after you after you gave that information to Steve Valero?
I was watching the aircraft, fly. And what happens is when any aircraft flies over what we call the main bang right over the radar site, it'll disappear momentarily because the radar does not go straight up.
Okay.
Okay? We have radar sites at Kennedy. That's the one he was using. We have radar sites at Newark and Westchester and Islip. And especially a fast-moving aircraft, you won't see it you'll see about a couple miles before it hits it depends on the altitude, the height. Because the radar goes out like this. It doesn't go straight up. So I was looking, and I should have seen her come out the other side of what we call the main bang, and I didn't see her.
Can we talk about that main bang for a moment? That's new terminology to us. And is this a cone? Is it a cone or is it a cylinder? And at higher altitude, does it take longer to go across that bang area?
Well, what happens is the radar will give you some false indications, especially with a fast-moving aircraft. The speed will actually lie a little bit. It'll show like it's going quicker for some reason. And this is common, where all the controllers are used to it. So what will happen is it'll kind of like disappear maybe 2 miles before it gets there, and then reacquire 2 or 3 miles on the other side.
Now your radar is here sweep every 5 seconds, right?
It goes around. My guess is about every 6.5 seconds.
So you're talking in 2 miles before it gets in, and it goes through the cone, and then for about 2 miles, there's a 4 mile gap. Is that what I just heard you say?
If he's going right to the main bang usually. So I couldn't. So like I said, I should have seen this aircraft. I had a good. I've seen it was a good target when it was over Long Island here. I went up to call. I said, who told me about Ridley? I said, I can't find American 11. And so we're looking up there. I went up to the watch desk. Normally we were here. Yeah. So this is the area. This is normally where the supervisor is, and there's a radar scope.
Let's see, Liberty's over here.
Okay, I'm sorry. That messes up pretty good. All right, so the person we're working it was right here.
Right.
Okay. So I went up to here to call, and I said, I can't find him. Where is he? You see him? I expected to see him, 15, 20 miles west of New York at the speed he was moving. I had no idea that he was down low, and that was the last thing I was thinking of. So he said he can't find him either. So I started walking back. We were both looking at the scope, and Carl's a very experienced person also. He couldn't find it, and I couldn't. We're looking, and as I was coming around the corner here, I heard one of the controllers say that the World Trade Center is on fire. And right then I knew. I just said the old death-letter word as I was coming around the corner here, and I said, oh, at that point. Because there's no reason he should have disappeared for that long.
Okay, so
I knew what happened at that point. Yeah. I knew.
In your mind, you equated that at that point with they crashed into the Trade Center?
Oh, no, not in my mind. I mean, there was a very slight doubt, but I just stopped in my tracks. I figured out what happened right then. Because the airplane should not have disappeared. It was a good target. And again, at high altitude, the higher you're going to see it, the better. So, the lower altitude will be, the target won't be as well.
Did you have any thoughts at that point about having concluded that he most likely hit the Trade Center? Did you have any thoughts about the fact that it was last reported at flight level of 29,000 feet? Did you think that was an accurate report? And if so, that had to be long before he crashed, if he was at altitude 29,000 feet at some point?
Well, I knew at that point that he never was. What I was going in my mind quickly was, how could this have happened? I'm thinking that a pilot went crazy, which has happened over in Egypt pilot, the 737 took it. I'm thinking that some pilot, one of the company pilots did something stupid. That was my initial reaction. How could this happen? Not terrorists,
Were you thinking, at that point, were you thinking just after the first crash, the report of the fire that you equated with the American 11 crash, were you thinking intentional act of the American pilot or catastrophic mechanical failure?
Intentional.
Were you thinking intentional? But not terrorism? Or were you thinking terrorism?
No, I wasn't thinking terrorism at that point. I wasn't thinking, I thought that we had to be one of the crew members had to do that.
You weren't aware of the threats from the cockpit that Boston Center had heard earlier?
No. From the time we were alerted to him, probably, or I was alerted to him, to impact, well, it had to be 3 minutes, possibly. That's a guess. You know, best I can remember.
I'm sorry, say that again. So,
I said from the time that I was alerted to him till, you know, I figured out he hit the tower. It had to be 3 minutes tops. I mean, the guy was doing more than, you know, he's doing, it had to be probably even less. If he was doing 300 knots, doing 5 miles a minute. I would say it was it had to be less than that at that. He was doing better than that. He was moving. You don't see airplanes going that fast down that low. You're not used to it. You see fighters do it. You know,
right.
You're not normal to see that. It's just it's not natural for a controller to see an airplane moving that quick unless he's a fighter doing some kind of air show or something.
Like coming over, flying over
at that ground
flying
speed.
over Yankee Stadium or something for the World Series. Although
well, even then they'll be slowed down because they want you to see it. Yeah. He's not going to go zooming, 450 knots over Yankee Stadium because you didn't see it. But you've seen other times where, and you're not that often around here, so. There was no way in my mind at that time that I think he was low altitude.
And at that point, had you heard anything yet about United Airlines 175? At the point when you first heard there was a fire?
United 175, that's a call sign, the second airplane?
Second,
Yep. No.
That didn't enter the picture yet?
That didn't enter. I mean, I was thinking this guy would come along. At that point, again, I'm thinking it's a pilot that's a very disgruntled pilot who did something stupid.
Well, did you share those thoughts with anyone else here? Anybody in management above you in the chain of command, or for that matter, below you in the chain of command?
At that point?
Yeah, at that point.
No. We knew that. There were a lot of reports on the frequencies from the other pilots, and they started saying, I think some of the controllers were saying maybe a little airplane hit it. And then the pilots saying that wasn't a little airplane. They were figuring it out. The pilots on the frequency were figuring it out, kind of, and the controls on the position were starting to figure it out that it was an airplane.
That it was an airplane?
An airplane.
Okay. Was there still a debate as far as what you remember hearing about whether it was a large or a small aircraft at first?
No. In my mind, I started thinking that it was like an American Eagle, like a small jet, like a Embraer jet that they have.
Okay.
Embraer jet, Echo 135 or 145. I just couldn't believe that it'd be, You
didn't think it was a jumbo jet?
No, not at that point. Again, I had no information on the flight, but I just couldn't believe, like I said, I didn't. People see all this stuff, and it's like a football game. It shoulda, coulda, woulda, There's nobody in this that we know of who had this information. So, well, why didn't you think of this? Well, we know the facts now, and there's a lot going on quickly then. Plus, there's a lot of other airplanes flying. You still have to keep order and not, let something else happen.
What do you recall happening then after this event where the fire at the Trade Center was reported and you were concluding that it was probably that primary target, American Airlines 11?
Like I said, there was a lot of questions. The controls asked them what's going on, and then they started piecing it together. It was a little airplane, and they were actually, I think a couple of people even said it was a small airplane that crashed into the towers, and they were getting it from the other pilots saying, nah, there's no way that was a small airplane.
You mean some of the pilots were saying that it was not?
The pilots that saw the fire come out of the World Trade Center were saying that wasn't a lot of questions going on. Later on in the second airplane, I was kind of sitting at the desk just open and then trying to, try to figure out what happened and what's going on. We heard, I think it was Washington Center talking to another South controller. That Steve Valero was no longer there, and there's another controller named Don Crivolavi got him out. And he was, I heard him talk about taking the point out, which is a normal procedure from, I'm almost positive. I was talking about the second one. He says about 15 minutes later, I heard the South controller, Don.
South controller, and he would have taken over from...
He took over for Valero.
And his name is Don...
Crivolavi.
K-R-I-V...
O-H-L-A-V-Y.
Okay.
He took over for Steve, and I heard him take a point out from the center, from most positive Washington, which is a normal thing, means that the aircraft is going to enter the airspace, but we're really not going to work it. All right, he's going to borrow our airspace momentarily.
Okay.
Okay, and I heard it, and say to point out, and then the aircraft was doing more than what Don expected him to do. Now he was descending more into his airspace. So Don was getting upset because here's his aircraft descending in his airspace, and he didn't know exactly what was happening. I heard him call the center, and he's getting anxious because he was worried about his other traffic. And at that point, my wife talks a lot about terrorists in the Mideast and that, and she says I was so lucky. In that point, I kind of put two and two together. He was upset, and I just walked over to him, and I said, I don't say my exact words. I pointed to the target, and I said, consider that a terrorist aircraft. I didn't know. I thought in my mind, I thought maybe it was a fighter. Maybe it was a fighter, but again, the way the guy was descending and at his speed, you don't fly a commercial jet that way. Okay, a fighter you would see doing that. So at the rate of his descent, at his speed, it's not a normal. They wouldn't do that. They don't want to mess with the pressurization system in the aircraft.
So the transponder was on, so you could get the altitude on this one.
He's at an altitude, and by the time I came over and saw him, if I remember correctly, he was descending at about 16,000 feet, and he was moving quickly, about 400 knots. So he's doing what you don't do. He'd be slowing down if he's coming in. First, you think it was an airplane possibly going to Newark or LaGuardia, but if he was, it would have started bringing it back. No, again, even if they weren't talking to anybody, he'd start slowing the airplane down because it takes a while to slow the thing down.
And where did you think, from what you could observe, where did it appear to be headed at that time as he was descending?
If it was from the area he came from, he would be either a Newark area or a LaGuardia airport arrival, meaning Peterborough, Morristown, Caldwell, Newark, or LaGuardia, the way he was coming in the area.
So he was headed in those general direction of those airports?
Yes. He'd be like off course slightly for those arrivals into those airports.
Did you make any observations at that point in terms of trying to determine whether he was headed in the same direction as the World Trade Center?
He was headed eastbound towards the city. Like I said, it would look like a normal Newark area or LaGuardia airport arrival. And like I said, he was getting upset. When I said that to him, he calmed down and, accepted that he was coming in. And then I walked up to the TMU desk, and the traffic manager at the time, Ron Reagan, was up there. And I poured into the target, and I said, here comes another one. Get some military planes to shoot the bastard down.
Was he already, when you went up there, was Reagan already looking at his scope, or did you?
He was up there looking at the scope, but he didn't see that airplane till I told him about it.
Was Birch there also?
I don't know.
You
Ron was Birch's boss, and he was looking at Ron Reagan at the time was
at the
Birch's
time,
boss.
He was Birch's boss?
Now Tom White is.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Right? Ron Reagan retired, and Tom White took his job.
Okay. But Reagan is the chain of command goes from Birch to you to Birch to Reagan.
Me to Birch to Reagan.
But at that time, you went straight to Reagan because he was there.
Right. He was there. He was looking at the scope. I pointed to the target, and I told him, here comes another one. Get some military planes to shoot the bastard down. That's what I said to him.
Do you know if there was any military assistance requested?
I knew there was nothing around.
Do you know if there was any request made?
At that point?
Yeah. In response to either the first or the second?
I don't know. I don't know. I knew there was, it was just frustration. I knew there was nothing going to be immediately airborne in the area. I knew the military aircraft, there's nothing based around here that can get airborne as quick.
On 9/11, where do you think was the nearest active military base to respond to fighter pilots to respond?
Fighter pilots?
Yeah.
I didn't even think about it at the time. I didn't. I think I just said it just as my frustration. That
just get the fighter pilots out.
Well, at that point, I said, then this is not cool. When the second guy was coming, and like I said, who knows who it was? I mean, it could have been a military. Nobody at that point, they didn't say that it wasn't an airliner. We didn't know who it was. We didn't know that was United Airlines.
Did you know that it was a commercial aircraft?
I assumed it was. I was hoping it was a military aircraft. The military will do things on their own and not talk to you and just do it. All right? They'll just show up, especially after and do what they have to do, and then talk about it later.
So now you're observing the target as it heads towards New York City, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And can you tell it's continuing to descend?
So you can see the altitude descend right into the ground.
And what happened when it descended into the ground?
Disappears.
Disappears from the scope?
It disappears from the scope, just like if an aircraft lands in an airport. Lands, you'll see it. If you want, you can blow the scope up. You can see them taxiing on our runway.
When you lost radar contact with it, what assumptions, if any, did you make as to what happened?
I knew it crashed. I don't know what it crashed into. And then there were some people that were watching on TV, and they came in from the break room, and they said that they saw it. You know, that shot you see over and over.
Going in.
John, can I?
Sure.
I'd like to replay what we just went through, but I'm using for the record, I'm using a draft sequence of events prepared by New York TradeCon, and it approximates what you just said, but there were some abbreviations and so forth. I want to make sure we got it straight. And who is who? And approximately 12:59 UTC in 90 Liberty South received a call from ZNY pointing out a target in the vicinity of Robbinsville. ZNY did not know the identification of the destination of the target. Now, as I understand it, you said that was no longer Steve Villaro, but that was
Don Krivolavi.
Don was there as in 90 Liberty South. That was Don.
And that's why he was getting upset. Well, who's this guy? We don't even know who he is. And I said, well, we don't know who he is. We'll treat him as a terrorist for now and see what happens, you know.
In 90 Liberty South, observed the point out, proceeding on a course toward New York City, rapidly descending at a speed before 450 and 500 knots, which is consistent with what you said. The Liberty South CPC, Certified
Professional Controller. That's Don Krivolavi.
Tagged the aircraft as P020.
When we get a point out, we just put a tag on it, a number. I can type your name on it. I can type almost anything I want. P stands for point out.
Okay.
So we just hit P and hit 0. And what it is, it just makes it easy to track the aircraft.
Okay.
You're still going to see the same. You're going to see the same information. You're going to see a full-time altitude and ground speed.
And that designation, that P020, Don decided to put that.
Right. You can put anything in. Anything.
Does that signify to you, if you saw P020 on the screen you were looking at, would that tell you who tagged it, what position tagged it?
Yes.
So how does that tell you? What's the...
Because each position, each radar scope has a different symbol, okay, a letter or a number, and that corresponds to a frequency. Like this Liberty South would be a 5.8.
5.8, right, okay.
You probably won't see it, okay, if you look at the position next to it, 5.4.
Right.
So anyone working on that radar scope, who they're talking to, would be a 5.8. Over here, be a 4.
But how does that equate with
P020?
That's the call sign. Let me show you in a blank piece of paper.
So it's part of the data block?
The data block, exactly. Basically, you're going to see a primary target for an aircraft. Okay? That's an old transponder.
Okay.
You got a transponder, you're going to see a line through it.
Okay.
Okay? So if I turn everything off, that's a raw radar. When you saw the American 11, no transponder, you saw a little dot. But the computer superimposes a little triangle on it, over it, for us to see it better.
Okay.
Okay?
Does it do that automatically? Or
automatically.
Okay.
So that's why I say American 11 was a triangle trucking along quickly. All right? This, what you would see over here, he's an 8, so his symbol will be an 8, and there'll be a line. All right? And then so it's a P020. I can say anything I want.
So the 8 is associated with the symbol, and then a line off of that will tell you to point out.
Right. It's called a leader line. So the first time I saw him, let's say it was 16,000 feet, and then over here it'll show his speed. You say it was 450. I'd say 450 knots. That's what we're going to see. The center information, if you look at Boston or New York, is a little bit different.
So when you see this on your scope, you know that is Don that did that because of the 8.
Right.
And then the P is a point out, and it's a unique identifier it gave it, and you pick up the speed and the...
Normally this would be the call sign. It would normally be the 8, you know, and you see the target right underneath. Yeah. And was it United 175? That's the call sign?
Yep.
United 175, 16,450 knots.
Okay.
That's what a transponder would look like. That.
Right. If we knew that if that was him, that's what he probably would have put on it. The transponder is this line. That's the transponder. The transponder, That's it. So basically, you also see a splat on these aircraft. I'd say if there's nobody talking to them, you see what's called a splat, like this. Okay? And then if you can set your filter limits, how low you want to see, how high. He would have been looking at this when I saw it at 16, so you'd see that splat, a little line, 16,000 feet.
Okay.
So if I had an airplane flying this way, obviously I wouldn't climb, and this guy's going this way, obviously I wouldn't, he's climbing in a conflict with this guy, even though he could be a VFR airplane flying around.
You're going to move it.
He's going this way, I'm just not going to let him climb into him, especially if he descended. I'm going to maybe give him a little right turn and go behind him.
Okay.
And make sure there's no conflict, even though I'm not talking to him.
Continuing here, it says that, okay, he tagged it up as P020, and we know he did it because there was an 8 associated with it. Then the Liberty OSIC, that would be you.
Mm-hmm.
Overheard South's conversation with ZNY, referenced and pointed out and observed the aircraft proceeding towards New York City, which is what you had already told us. And having known of the first aircraft striking the World Trade Center, the Liberty OSIC went to the N90 TMO, Traffic Management Officer TMO, and that was...
Ron Reagan, right?
No, that was...
That's Ron Reagan.
Ron Reagan, okay. And pointed out the PO tag to Reagan and indicated to the N90 TMO that this aircraft may be a second aircraft headed for the World Trade Center.
I told him that.
Yeah, you told Reagan
I
that.
said it, basically, no more exact words. Here comes another one. And then I said the thing about them to shoot him down.
Then the N90 TMO, that would be Reagan, observed the tagged aircraft descending at approximately 4,000 feet per minute and approximately 500 knots. But you had observed the same thing, essentially.
And again, you wouldn't see them do that. If they were landing at Newark or LaGuardia or Teterboro, they wouldn't be, you're not coming down unless you had an emergency.
Right.
Which is outside. If you're on fire and for some reason your radios aren't working and you're heading for Kennedy, you're just going to do it. And then remember, I was a pilot. I got an airline transport rating, got over 5,000 hours of flying. You know, I used to be a captain in these small airplanes. You're going to do what you have to. You don't talk to anybody.
Right.
You're not going to put that airplane on the ground. I don't care what anybody says. You know, and that's the outside chance, but it's too coincidental here, you know. And again, I'd rather err on saying it was that, and if the guy landed in Kennedy had a fire in the cockpit, that's fine.
The N90 Liberty South CPC, again, that's Don, observed the target of the tagged aircraft disappear from ACD.
That's the radar scope.
That's what it's
That's
called.
what it's called, a something display.
Yeah, something. Air
traffic
control.
Sorry, I'm good.
That might be it.
Another acronym
that's the radar scope.
That's the scope.
Control display or something.
Yeah. Now, in the next bullet, it says the N90 Operations Manager in Charge. Now, that's different from the TMO. Was Reagan?
That would be Bob Birch.
So Birch was the OMIC in this sequence of events, and Reagan is the TMO.
Right.
So does this establish that both of them were there at that time?
Yes, they were both there.
Okay. That's the point I was getting to, is that both Reagan and Birch were present.
Birch is in charge of the operations on the floor. There's the 5 areas.
Right.
Birch is in charge of the 5 areas plus the traffic management unit, if you want to say that's the 6 areas.
And Reagan
normally works here, but when he was alerted, he immediately came upstairs, I imagine.
So Reagan was probably off the floor.
Probably, I don't know. His office is down here, downstairs, down by the manager's office.
But at some point in time, he is on the floor.
He was definitely on the floor.
Because you went straight to him with the information you had. Okay.
Birch might have even been on the phone with other conversations, and Reagan is, and Birch, they're both very, very competent in their job. You know, very proactive.
Sorry, John, I just wanted to replay that with this piece of information.
After, what do you recall happening after the second target, the PL4 target disappeared, and I think your statement is within a minute, less than a minute later, people came in the radio room and said that the other tower of the World Trade Center was hit by an aircraft, and they saw it on TV. What happened after that?
Within a few minutes, I think we stopped all the parts of that in the New York area. I don't know the exact time that occurred.
Mm-hmm.
That we stopped the traffic arrived early. That was Ron Reagan's decision to stop everything, to let everything settle down and see what the heck's happening here. And I think that might have been the impetus to shut them down throughout the country.
So the first thing was...
I guess some people knew what was going on with the other 2 airplanes.
So the first thing you recall action being taken was a decision most likely by Reagan to ground all
Yeah,
departures.
there'll be a log somewhere. I don't know if you got it there. That'll say exactly when that happened, when the departures. But there's
in the area.
in the actual facility log will say when
Right, and then
when it
this,
was stopped.
this
Probably wasn't much longer, maybe 5 after the most.
this reconstruction said at approximately 1307, which was
Yeah.
very shortly thereafter, the TMO would have been
Reagan
instructed the
Stop
N90
everything.
TMCs to stop all N90 arrivals and departures and sterilize the terminal airspace.
Now that, when they say stop arrivals and departure and sterilize, if
There's-
they say they don't want anything coming through,
There's another log up there called the traffic management log. That's where you're probably going to get that exact information from. On September 11th, each day, all air traffic things that we do are recorded. Okay, there's actually 2 logs up there. There's a facility log. I'm sure you've seen those. The yellow, it's the original yellow. Was it 80, 20, 11, whatever it is? And then there's another log separate from that called the traffic management, which takes care of traffic management initiatives. Went into a hole for Newark. Wanted to put out restrictions, 20 miles in trailer in Newark, stop LaGuardia arrivals to airports and gridlock, Kennedy's, a lot of go-arounds, changing, explains what happens all day
Whose
long.
responsibility is to maintain those logs?
The traffic management log is maintained by the traffic management coordinators, and then the area managers log, the facility log is maintained by Bob Birch. That log will be more involved in equipment.
Right.
A radar scope failed, Westchester radar failed, something where the electric went off when the engines, anything unusual, somebody fell down the steps. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
The separate log is traffic management initiatives. So the questions you're asking, you're probably going to get out of the traffic management log. That's
And when you use the terminology TMC,
traffic management coordinator.
that's different from
That's the person. The person is the traffic management coordinator.
right.
That's the person.
And the
That's
position
Paul Georgek, the guy who showed me the
Oh, that's
airplane.
Carl. Okay.
That's Carl originally, and there probably were others up there.
Okay. That's. I was just distinguishing who the TMC would be that make the
Yeah.
That would have been Carl.
Right. Or maybe another person.
Or maybe another person.
Right. Who was working with Carl. I don't even recall who was working with him. And they would say exactly what time they stopped the departures, and maybe they went into what's called the ground stop, maybe, which means stop everything coming inbound to the city. Stop the,
Stop the arrivals.
if you're number 4 to take off of Washington, you're not coming out. You're sitting there until. But the airplanes that are coming in, we're still going to take till.
Until they clear the airspace, until you clear your Tracon airspace.
Yeah, I mean, you're 8 minutes, 7 minutes from landing, might as well let you land. Well, we're not going to send you somewhere else unless the airport's closed, So that's where you get that information as far as the traffic management. We call initiatives we're taking care of.
Did you hear anything later that morning about the flight to hit the Pentagon, American 77?
Yes.
What did you learn about that and when?
I can answer that now.
I'll take a break.
Something to drink.
Yeah.